All right, so this is really interesting, guys. It was either last week or the week before I played a video for you. It was from CNN, and it was this guy, Harry Enton, who's their, like, polling and numbers guy. And what was it exactly? I think it was, like, right track, wrong track number. I think that's what it was. And the number is kind of at a historic low. It's at 28%. I think we're on the right track. And you've never had a candidate win when they were in that range. I think the lowest a candidate was like maybe 35 or 39% right track, and they won. But Kamala's at 28, or people have it at 28 right now. And if she's viewed as an incumbent, then, you know, there's punishment for that. And that's a really, really bad number for her that nobody's talking about. But at the same time, when it comes to data, when it comes to poll numbers, man, there's so many different ways to read it. And there's so many numbers that come out that are like, novel numbers in a novel situation that seem to paint a very clear picture, but you could find them sort of all over the map, so it's hard to really nail this down. But I do want to show you this clip because I think it's fair to call this, what you're about to see here, Kamala's secret weapon in the election. So let's watch and then we'll react.
Let's take a look here. The GOP's margin among white women. Look, Romney won him by 9, all right? Trump in 2016 won him by 6. You go back 4 years ago, Trump won him by 7. Look now, look how much lower Trump's margin is among white women. Look, he still leads, but it's well within the margin of error. It's just a point. He's doing 6 points worse than he did 4 years ago. In fact, he's doing the worst, if this holds, for a GOP candidate this century among white women, John.
Well, how much do white women matter in the electorate?
So this is the whole thing, right? How much do they matter? If you were to break it down, white women, white men, women of color, men of color, white women make up the plurality of the electorate, 36%. So, you know, yesterday we were talking about those massive gains that Donald Trump was making among black men, black women. But the bottom line is they actually make up a considerably smaller portion of the electorate than white women do. So when we're talking about 5-6 point shifts, 7 point shifts in Kamala Harris's direction, we're talking about that among a major part of the electorate, and that can actually move the overall electorate more than ginormous shifts among a considerably smaller part of the electorate.
You can just do the math. More than double the impact, depending on how it all spaces itself out. Why?
Why? I think that this gets at a pretty good reason why. All right, abortion is the top voting issue. We're going to look at Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, on average, where 80% or north of the voters are white. Look at this. The percentage of women who say that abortion is the top voting issue come November, 27%. Look at this gender gap. Among men in those states, it's just 7%. I think what we're talking about here is after Roe v. Wade was overturned in 2022, white women in the suburban areas, in these key battleground states, have very much turned against Republicans. And we're seeing in the polling right now, because Kamala Harris is doing historically well, at least this century, for a Democratic candidate among white women. And of course, they make up a very large portion of the electorate. If she wins, it could ultimately be because she did so well with white women, John.
So there's all this talk about how Trump is doing historically well with Hispanics and black people relative to how Republicans do. Republicans lose those demographics, but he's doing relatively well compared to previous campaigns with those groups. But, like, I'll believe it when I see it, right? Because this has happened a number of times where it's like the polling shows X, and then when the election rolls around, it's like it just reverts to what it was previously, you know? So I'm not sold completely on those polls that show him doing so much better with those groups. But even if you grant that to him, right, you also have to contend with this, which is white women increasingly are turning against him and don't want him. And by the way, there's also a massive surge of women registering to vote. A lot of women of color registering to vote. And this is kind of like Kamala's secret weapon. She might even afford to be able to lose in other categories if she makes up enough in just the white women category, right? And I have to say, look, it's anecdotal, but in my own personal experience, even among Republican women, I don't know any that like him, bro. I don't know any that like him. And I'm talking actual Republican women. Like, my mom was raised in a Republican household. She is a registered Republican. And the first time ever that I saw her vote Democrat was actually 2008 for Obama. And since then, she's voted more Democrat than she has Republican. But you talk to her about Trump, and it is just despises him. Like, okay, Trump embodies like every negative characteristic of a dude who ends up getting divorced, right? Like, that's the vibe he gives off. Like, just totally full of shit, totally arrogant, self-obsessed, demeaning to everybody around him, contradictory, liar, just like none of the, and I'm not a big like, oh, character, super important, but like, seriously, in terms of character, the guy is a fucking empty black void of a human being, right? He's fueled on narcissism and grievance and bitterness and anger and can never hold an L, no matter how obvious it is. And it's like, you think women don't, like, women see through that shit from a mile away. They probably saw that shit by 2016, 2017. They were like, yeah, this guy's full shit. I'm very familiar with this kind of person. I'm very familiar with it. And that's why now you're seeing he's, you know, at a historic low in terms of a Republican in this century with white women. White people, as a general demographic, Republicans get a lot of white people. I mean, their sweet spot is non-college educated white men. It's like they're plus 43 trillion with that group, right? But for white women, he's slipping and slipping and slipping. And look, it's what I see anecdotally, even with Republican women who I know. And I think they might come out in droves. Like, that's the thing, right? Your polls are only as good as what your framework is and what you assume in terms of turnout. And it is very possible to just wildly miss on that front, right? That's why in 2022, everybody, oh, red wave, red wave, red wave, red wave. And I was agnostic. I said, I don't know if it's going to be a red wave. There's some bad signs for the Republicans too, right? But everybody went with red wave, red wave. And it's like, whatever framework they used was incorrect. They weren't able to accurately account for the abortion voters who hate what Republicans did with the Supreme Court and throwing out Roe v. Wade, and the anti-election denialist voter. People were totally fucking sick of that. And then guess what? Here we are in 2024, 2 years later, and they still have those same problems, right? And I even go further than what they're saying. They're saying it's, you know, abortion is such a top issue and white women are abandoning Republicans over that, etc. But like, it's not just that. It's really not. It's really not just that. That's a big part of it. But I think also, I still think that election denialism is really, really holding Republicans back. And it's just, we've seen it. Guys, we've seen it how many times now? Trump is the only one who could pull off Trumpism, and he only did it once, 2016. Every election since then, the Republicans, under his leadership, have massively underperformed. And then you get all the Trump mini-me's out there, the Mark Robinsons and the Carrie Lakes and the Doug Mastrianos and the Blake Masters, and they always lose. They lose. They just lose. Only Trump can pull off Trumpism, and he only did it once, right? So who's to say there's not a massive polling miss on the other side? Because the other thing is Republicans melt down. If you are wrong in your polling and you underestimated Trump or Republicans, Republicans will rip you to shreds from now until the end of time and never let you live it down. If you're wrong in a way that you underestimate Democrats, Democrats kind of shrug and just say, okay, whatever, right? So there's all the incentive in the world to sort of bake into your model that you're going to have relatively high Republican turnout and, oh, we don't want to underestimate them like we did in 2016, et cetera. But that could just be wrong. Like, the way that they're expecting the election to go could just be wrong. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But when we're looking at numbers like this appears like a genuine Kamala secret weapon. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.